Prayer is not just saying what you're grateful for or what you desire or asking for things you want. It's really about feeling the force of something else, whatever that may be, and really teaching our bodies and minds to believe in and trust that we're fully connected to this force. Hi, and welcome back to the Wellbe podcast, a weekly series designed to help you learn, expand what you thought was possible, and become as empowered as you possibly can be in your health. I'm your host, Nolan-Smith, a board-certified holistic patient advocate and the founder of Wellbe. And today I'm bringing you a brand new investigative guide all about the science of prayer and spirituality, especially for healing physical symptoms in the body, but also for greater health benefit all around. Before we jump in, I want to give a shout out to Erica Bushwell, who said in her review of the podcast, "This podcast is extremely informative and insightful. Each show offers insightful advice to better your life and health as a whole. The positive energy is motivational and inspiring." Thank you so much, Erica. I really appreciate it, and I'm incredibly touched by your kind words. They mean more than you know. If you're listening, Erica, email hello@getwellbe.com, and my team is going to send you a special gift in gratitude for leaving a review of the podcast and for such sweet words. If you want a shout out from me or a chance to win a gift from Wellbe, make sure you leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. You don't even have to stop listening to this episode. Just scroll all the way down on the Wellbe podcast page in your app, likely Apple Podcast app or something similar like Spotify, and click Write a Review, give it a few stars and a few words, and then press Submit in the top right-hand corner. It's super fast and easy, but actually very important for any podcast, so thank you for doing that now. All right, so let's dive in. The umbrella of integrative and holistic or complementary and alternative medicine is large. Underneath it, you'll find everything from acupuncture to herbal tinctures to infrared sauna therapy and beyond, all of which are founded upon deep tradition, robust research, or both. But one field of alternative medicine that's been less studied and explored is that of prayer for physical healing, or just prayer for longevity and better health. Given how many people pray for specific health outcomes, it's quite notable how little is actually known about the healing power of prayer. But today I'm going to share what the research says about prayer, spirituality, and your health. Regardless of religious practices or beliefs, prayer for health is incredibly widespread. According to one survey, almost 80% of Americans have turned to prayer for physical healing, and 90% have prayed for the healing of others. Meanwhile, Harvard Medical School found that 35% of American adults use prayer in addition to conventional medicine for specific health issues, and that 70% of that group reported prayer to be very helpful. More recently, the Pew Research Center reported that 55% of American adults have prayed for the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. With so many people using prayer as a means to physical health, it's disappointing how little solid research has been conducted on the topic. This is the result of various factors, not the least of which is how difficult it is to study the healing power of prayer. For one thing, it's very difficult to prove that any healing is a direct result of prayer, since we don't understand the mechanism behind prayer for physical healing. Researchers don't know which pathways to study, which body parts to scan, which levels to measure, the types of things they would rely on to prove the efficacy of, say, a pharmaceutical. If someone gets better after praying, it's difficult to know if it's a result of prayer or some other immeasurable factor. Then there's all of the logistical factors that impede studying the healing power of prayer. First, there's not one established definition of prayer. Does it have to be affiliated with a certain religion? Must it be said out loud? Does meditation count? There's also the fact that researchers studying prayer have to rely on subjects' self-reports of how often they pray and the form that their prayer takes. Perhaps most of all, there's the financial element. The conventional medical community has long been skeptical of religion in general, and as a result, very few researchers and institutions are interested in studying prayer for physical healing. Because of this, there are no established methods for researching the topic, and also a severe lack of funding. In fact, only about $5 million is spent worldwide on such research each year. Compare that to $41.7 billion spent by the National Institute of Health, or the NIH in the US, on medical research, which includes things like scientific studies aimed at developing new ways to treat, diagnose, prevent, and understand disease. Still, research on the healing power of prayer does exist, and it leaves us with at least some understanding of how and why prayer may affect physical wellness. While prayer and religion are not the same thing, there is a huge overlap. Not everyone who prays is religious or associates with a specific religion, but this is true of many of them. And because it's easier to study things like church attendance, which can be quantified and verified, than it is to study prayer, which is more nebulous and relies on self-reporting, there's some more solid data on spirituality and health than there is on prayer and health. Overall, the research that does exist suggests that there are health benefits associated with practicing a religion or some form of spirituality and being part of a religious or spiritual community. In one study, researchers found that those who attended church more than once per week were 55% less likely to die during an 18-year follow-up period than those who didn't attend church. Another study, this one out of Duke University, found that among hospitalized people, those who never attended church had an average stay that was 3 times longer than those who did attend church. While a Dartmouth College study found that heart patients were 14 times more likely to die after surgery if they didn't participate in a religion. Of course, these studies only show correlation, not causation, and there are plenty of factors that could be contributing to these results. For instance, religious people tend to live healthier lives than non-religious people. They're less likely to smoke, drink, take drugs, and they're automatically plugged into the support of a like-minded community, which can provide emotional benefits. One way that religion may contribute directly to increased health is by giving people a specific worldview that helps them put problems in perspective and cope more easily with life's challenges. Within this structure, people are better able to maintain a positive attitude when faced with health problems, and this positivity and calm can contribute to better physical health. Interestingly, this worldview and belief system doesn't need to come from a specific religion in order to have a positive physical effect. Research around spirituality and health suggests that spiritually oriented meditation can have more health benefits than its secular or non-religious counterpart. One study compared secular, meaning non-religious, and spiritual, meaning religious, forms of meditation, specifically meditating on non-religious affirmations versus meditating on the idea of a higher power, and found significant differences in the two groups. Those who practiced spiritual meditation were less anxious and more positive and had a much higher pain tolerance. They were able to submerge their hands in freezing water for twice as long as those in the secular or non-religious group. So putting religion or spiritual practices aside, let's look specifically at the idea of prayer for physical healing. Right off the bat, it's important to distinguish between the different kinds of prayer. There's first-person prayer, which is praying for yourself, and then there's third-person prayer, or intercessory prayer, which is having someone else pray for you. The research on third-person prayer is quite limited and inconclusive, and even contradictory at times. So we'll put it aside for now and focus solely on first-person prayer for physical healing. With first-person prayer, the research is limited by virtue of the activity itself. People pray privately in many different ways, and oftentimes people only turn to prayer when something bad is happening, making it difficult to get a representative cross-section of people for research studies. However, the research that does exist suggests some positive results from first-person prayer for physical healing. For example, one study on meditative prayer looked at cardiovascular patients who prayed with the rosary or recited yoga mantras and found that both groups experienced striking, powerful improvements in cardiovascular rhythms, as well as increased baroreflex sensitivity, a measure of heart health. Another study on women undergoing radiation therapy for breast cancer showed that after 6 weeks of spiritual therapy sessions, which included prayer, they had significantly improved quality of life scores as compared with the control group. A study that looked at the healing power of prayer for mental health found that people had lower rates of both depression and anxiety after prayer sessions, compared to a group that didn't engage in prayer sessions. Pain is one area where prayer might be able to make a big difference, because while pain is indeed physical, the perception of pain is mediated through the brain. Several studies underscore this idea, including 2 separate studies showing that prayer decreased symptoms of pain after a C-section, while one review of studies determined that prayer is an effective and safe means of pain management for religious people undergoing surgery or painful procedures. In patients with chronic pain, prayer for physical healing was shown to have a positive effect on pain tolerance, though not the actual severity of the pain. Another compelling finding about first-person prayer comes from Dr. Kelly Turner, who was featured in the Heal documentary. If you have taken the program or heard about the program, Wellbe partnered with Kelly Noonan-Gores, who is the filmmaker behind the Heal documentary, for a program that we run called A Roadmap to Healing. In our program, we talk about the work of Dr. Kelly Turner. She studied over 1,500 people who had experienced radical remission from cancer and identified 10 factors that they all had in common. One of those 10 factors was deepening their spiritual connection. The research on the healing power of prayer has one relatively clear takeaway. For those who are open to prayer and have some sense of belief in a higher power, prayer can have health benefits. Of course, the religious among us may say that this is because of the intervention of a divine power, and while that's of course possible, it's not something that science can really verify. You might think prayer is fairly straightforward. Dear God, please fill in the blank. And you may think spirituality is just believing in God or some sort of spiritual being. But believing in something and practicing it are 2 very different things. I'll share a personal anecdote that involved prayer that happened to me recently, so you can see how I went about it and how it didn't turn out the way I expected, but actually much better. A close friend recently almost lost her newborn baby to an undiscovered birth defect a few days after she was born that was making it hard for her to breathe. A few months before this happened, I had prayed to my mom, who passed away and who I most often pray to, and asked her for something that I wanted, which was a baby girl. And then I found out that I was having a baby boy. Doubt crept in. I wondered if she was really listening. I began to think praying to her was silly. Then a month or 2 later, I asked for my mom's help again with a big work project. The project didn't turn out as well as I had hoped, and again, I was disappointed, and I doubted whether she could really help me, if she was listening. And if she was listening, why were my prayers going unanswered? Then when my friend's baby nearly died, I really prayed. I got on my knees and I begged my mom to help save this baby's life. I focused my attention until I felt tapped in, or like an electric belt of positive energy was connecting me to her. I heard my mom's voice. I asked her to respond. I then visualized her saying words back to me. It turns out my friend's mother was a close friend of my mother's, so it was easy for me to talk about these people with her, and I could hear her telling me that she wouldn't let her friend down. My friend's baby underwent a life flight in a medical helicopter and 2 emergency surgeries before she was even 2 weeks old. She then went back and forth to the hospital several times in the weeks following the surgery, but now she's finally home, she's on the mend, and it looks like she's going to be okay. I realized from that experience that sometimes the force is going to be used in ways we really can't predict or see ahead of time. I realized that the things we think are important may not be in the grand scheme of things, or at least not important enough to harness the power of the force or some sort of divine intervention. Prayer is not just saying what you're grateful for or what you desire or asking for things you want. It's really about feeling the force of something else, whatever that may be, and really teaching our bodies and minds to believe in and trust that we're fully connected to this force. Many of us doubt and question whether prayer or whoever we're praying to is really doing anything, or whether this is even real. Our minds hear and feel this doubt and questioning, making the exercise ineffective. What has helped me is speaking as if I know my mom is already on my side helping me, even if sometimes I can't see or understand yet how she's using her power to help. And maybe I'll never be able to understand it. But the confidence that the right things are going to happen because of her help is where the health benefits come in. And remember that if you do ask for things, they may or may not happen. The key is understanding and really believing that this force is helping and looking out for you, so that even if something you want doesn't come true, you believe that there's a reason and you keep the faith that the reason will present itself when the time is right, or that there is something even better or more important that the force will help you with in the future. Most researchers believe that the physical benefits of prayer are spillovers from the mental benefits of prayer. Much like other mind-body practices like meditation and yoga, prayer can promote better mental well-being. And given the healing power of the mind, this is huge. There are several specific pathways through which prayer can improve mental health and thus physical health, including, number 1, prayer elicits the relaxation response. Prayer helps your body and mind fall into a meditative state, which turns on your parasympathetic nervous system, aka the rest and digest system, and turns off the sympathetic nervous system, aka the fight or flight system. This inhibits the production of cortisol and other stress hormones and allows your body to focus on healing and recovery, leading to things like improved immune function and digestion and better overall physiological functioning. Next, prayer allows people to release control. When people pray, they're often putting their worries into the hands of something greater than themselves, which could result in lower stress and all the attendant physiological benefits. Next, prayer could trigger the placebo effect. Even if there isn't an intervention from a higher power, simply believing that one might occur could have similar results. There have been extensive studies on the power of the placebo effect to bring about real healing, and it's possible that this is at play here as well. I have a great episode if this topic interests you, that is the power of the placebo effect to bring about real healing, with a medical doctor named Wayne Jonas, who has focused on this much of his career and was an army doctor for a long time. It's a great episode, so search in your podcast app for GetWellbe and Wayne Jonas and you should find the episode. Next, prayer can reduce anger and aggression. Anger and aggression can have a number of different negative health repercussions, from cardiovascular issues to worse lifestyle choices and more. And research has shown that prayer is effective at reducing levels of those feelings. Next, prayer evokes positive feelings. Praying is associated with a whole host of positive feelings, including love, compassion, and gratitude. Experts believe that many of the health benefits of prayer come from the wellness-promoting effects of these positive emotions. And lastly, prayer gives you a sense of connection, especially when done in a group setting or when praying to someone specific, like a loved one who has passed on. A lot of research has shown that social connection is important for your overall health. For instance, chronic loneliness is associated with hypertension and premature death. And prayer can help people connect with others, whether that connection is with a specific religious community, a higher power, or simply all the others who have prayed before you. When someone experiences health improvements after praying, it's difficult to pinpoint exactly how and why this happened. It could have been one of the pathways I just talked about, it could have been something totally unrelated to prayer, or it could have been the intervention of a higher power, who knows? To figure out what it is will require much more research, if it's ever knowable at all. The good thing is that there aren't any side effects or copays associated with prayer, so there's no risk to having faith, and from my personal experience, I can tell you, feeling the force or having the knowing that someone or something out there is on my side looking out for me is pretty powerful. There is some research from which we can glean some greater understanding of the relationship between spirituality and health, as well as how we can use prayer to achieve greater wellness. Here's what to remember. 1, there hasn't been much research conducted on the effectiveness of prayer for healing. This is in part due to a lack of interest and funding in the conventional medical community, and in part due to logistical problems with designing studies on prayer. For the latter, this includes problems like defining what prayer means, trusting self-reporting of participants, and being able to definitively draw a connection between a certain outcome and prayer. Then, the most conclusive research on the topic has to do with how religious participation impacts health. Several studies show that people who belong to a religious community and regularly attend religious services have better health outcomes. We don't know whether this has anything to do with prayer or religion, or whether it's because of other factors, like the fact that some religious communities don't drink or smoke, and don't do other things that may negatively impact health. And therefore, people who attend church in these religions tend to live healthier lives in general. Next, there are two different types of prayer for physical healing. There's first-person prayer, or praying for yourself, and third-person prayer, or intercessory prayer, or praying for other people. The research on both is limited. However, for first-person prayer, the existing research suggests that prayer for physical healing can have a positive effect, especially with pain. Next, there are a number of theories for why prayer may lead to positive health outcomes in certain people and circumstances. Prayer elicits the relaxation response, reduces anger, allows people to release control, creates a sense of connection, and may trigger the placebo effect. Of course, it could also truly be the work of something much bigger than us, something that science doesn't have a way to measure or study. Thanks everyone for listening, and now I'd love to know, what is an inspired action you're going to take to deepen your spiritual connection and give prayer a try if it's not something you do regularly? Or maybe prayer helped you heal a physical symptom. Whatever your experience has been, make sure you leave a comment on the article version of this episode on getwellbe.com, and you'll find a link in the show notes. It's helpful for the entire WellBe community to know your takeaway and insight. Also, while you're there, become a WellBe Insider so that you can get all of our latest content, special offers, and personal notes I don't share anywhere else weekly in your inbox. Plus, you'll get a free copy of my audio guide on how to feel the best you've ever felt and heal anything. The 10 things you need to optimize your health and heal any health issue, big or small, naturally. Even if you're the healthiest person out there, I promise you'll learn something you didn't know before that can help you optimize your health. All right, I'll see you back here next week for another episode of the WellBe Podcast. If you haven't already and found this episode helpful or interesting, subscribe to the podcast. This way you'll never miss a new episode and they'll be delivered to you whenever we publish a new one. And please share this episode with family or friends who you think might find it valuable and informative. It means a lot and helps more people find the podcast. If you already have, then thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Once again, this is your host, Adrienne Nolan-Smith, and thanks for listening to the WellBe Podcast.